You have to trade one of them in a trade to get a star. You have to trade either Mikal Bridges in picks or Cam Thomas in picks. Which one are you more open to trading?
Gets it off in time. And he's got it, baby! Big time Nets win!
The only Nets fans you know.
Man.
I mean, come on, man. Or are these guys?
Welcome back to the Net Fans You Know podcast. I'm Peter. Welcome to episode number 73, Burrow Buzz. Our guest today is coming live from across the pond. I hate to be stereotypical, but I got to put another shrimp on the Barbie. Brooklyn Buzz's own Jac Manuell. What's going on, bro? Thanks for doing this.
Mate, it's a pleasure. Cheers for having me on, Pete. It's there's many a ponds in between the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere where you are right now.
You can do one of many. But yeah, I feel like this is long overdue. I think it was an article from Zach Lowe. The Nets are trying not to necessarily build around Mikal Bridges, but use the draft picks that we got from the KD trade to get someone to kind of join him, kind of building with Mikal rather than building around Mikal.
Yeah, look, I think I've made my thoughts known. It's sort of repeating the same sort of things we already knew, but hearing it from Zach Lowe sort of hits at home. Okay, so this is where the Nets are going. This is what their direction is. And is it the right direction? And obviously we had the trade deadline come and go, and we heard that Mikal Bridges was offered to Houston for however many picks that the Nets had in that James Harden sort of trade. Now, it's funny, you know, you hear like the Cam Thomas believers and stands or whatever versus Mikal Bridges, and it's just like, well, shouldn't this be the guy that we're building around? And Cam Thomas is playing much better at Mikal Bridges of late. But I think if you get Mikal Bridges in that sort of higher level Phoenix Suns role, what he sort of has shown glimpses this year and in a sustained period last season, and you get whoever it might be. Obviously, I think, you know, Donovan Mitchell, Trae Young, you know, those are probably the two guys that are heavily rumored. But if you can get a prime A guy, you know, Luka Doncic is the guy that I think maybe Joel Embiid is that all of us would love. But I think Mikal is a foundational piece for reasons that I think have been iterated. And some people are misinterpreting those reasons and saying he's not a foundational guy. It's like, yeah, I think any team in any franchise would consider Mikal Bridges foundational, given his contract, given his status, given how he is as a player, given how he can fit and, you know, mold and be a part of so many different winning lineups and winning combinations. So, look, I'll be happy if Mikal Bridges is a Brooklyn Net long term. I hope that he can improve his form to end the season along the way. But whether it is the right direction, Pete, I have my question marks.
I personally think that he's a off-the-ball elite star, that if you get this guy a point guard, you will see the production that he had last year with us. Is he a number 2? Is he a number 3 option? What do you think?
I'd say he's like a high-level number 3, but can be like a sort of 2B. You know, I think you sort of look at a Chris Middleton sort of type and a Paul George sort of type, but I think he fits somewhere in between there. So is that a 2B, is that a 3? You know, it depends on what situation and the rest of the team around him. But I think the flaws in his game in terms of his handle, his defense has been pretty bloody poor this year in comparison to what he's shown in Phoenix. And
you know what? I'm going to interrupt you there. I think it's not fair to judge him on the defense per se because of all the mileage on this guy's legs. FIBA, that finals run. I think we kind of have to give him a little bit of a break and give him one more year because, listen, this guy had no break coming into this season, and he's asked to become the number 1, the face of the franchise, and defend one of the top guys on the other team. There was a stat that came out. I think he was 9th in the toughest matchup in the NBA as far as defensive matchup. Do you think that's fair to grade him that harshly, as some fans are?
Yeah, look, I think you just judge it off what we've seen lately. You can only judge off the sample size that is most recent for us. And most recently, you know, the 60 or so games that we've seen this year, he hasn't been a good defender. If anything, he's been, when he set such high standards for himself as one of the great point of attack defenders, one of the great screen navigators in the NBA, and he hasn't had that. And I think that has been, as you've alluded to, and as you've alluded to for a long time, the increased burden and responsibility for him for such a long time, you know, playing 400, 500 games straight plus international basketball. I think that the answer lies somewhere in between. I think that, you know, if he is taking that one assignment, you know, there's I hark back to the Cade Cunningham shot that he hit over Mikal Bridges where he's sort of licking his lips a little bit. Like, I got you, man. I got you here. And I think I would say like a Dennis Smith Jr. has been, our best point of attack defender this year. And that's because I think he is like right in the face of the offensive player. Whereas Mikal is just leaving space. And whether it's for guys to drive past him, whether it's for guys to hit an open mid-ranger, I just think he's a step or two off. And when you're a step or two off against some of the best offensive players, and the way that the game has been officiated this season, maybe not so the last 5 or 10 games, but he's just been off, and that little bit off is a big step down for him, and his very high and lofty standards that he set for himself.
I think that you've been one of the more vocal people, but more fair people when it's come down to Cam Thomas. I saw the whole thing on Twitter. Oh, you're CT obsessed. I don't think you're CT obsessed. There's guys like Cypher from Nets Kingdom. That is CT obsessed. He's putting up different stats every day, every minute. Do you think that Mikal Bridges' value has kind of been shadowed now that CT is kind of the main option since Kevin Ollie took over? He has 21 points, 44% from the field, 40% from three. 7 out of 11 games, he has 20 points or more. 5 out of those 11 games, 25 points or more. Do you think Mikal Bridges and CT are kind of going on different paths? And now you have it that Cam Thomas is more valuable in a trade, possibly?
Yeah, look, I just think that both of them don't need to be pitted against each other because we've seen them when they play well together. I think it was like the Cavs game, the Bucks game earlier in the season. That's when the Nets have looked their best. And I think that, whether it's Kevin Ollie staggering those guys, because I think Cam can get other guys open, but I think it's better when it's sort of, a Clax or a Dayon Sharp. He works better with big men when it comes to some of his passing and leveraging some of that. And I think, as you alluded to, Mikal is just so much better off secondary actions where he doesn't have to dribble the ball, and his weak-ish handle can be exploited by opposing defenders. So I think both of those guys can be utilized, together. I don't think it's an either-or proposition, but I think right now, as you alluded to, the numbers speak for themselves. As Jay-Z said, men lie, women lie, numbers don't. And Mikal Bridges' numbers, I can't remember. I think it was Doug or Nori over Locked On Nets the other day was sort of saying that in the past, 20 games, 13 of them, Mikal Bridges hadn't had, it might even be 14 or 15 now, where he had less than 20 points. And for your best player or your 1A or 1B, that's just not good enough. And his efficiency, I think both of those guys, when they're at their best, the Nets play well. So I think we should be wanting for both of those guys to do well. And yes, we have our criticisms as fans and we might be irrational at times, but I think it's coming from a place of we want this team to be the best. And the best version of this team this season has been when both of those guys have shone. Yes, individually, Cam has gone off and Mikal's gone off for his 40 pieces, etc. here and there against the Hawks and whatever. But at the same time, we all want the team to just win and look good. And when it's both of those guys together, it does feel a little bit better as a fan seeing both of those guys find a little bit of semblance of chemistry. But I don't think that they are the best. It's not Chris Paul and Mikal Bridges. Let's put it that way.
I'm going to mess up everything you just said and give you this, okay? Curveball. You have to trade one of them in a trade to get a star. You have to trade either Mikal Bridges in picks or Cam Thomas in picks. Which one are you more open to trading?
Discounting salary stuff. I think thinking about what other teams would value more, we sort of have seen what the market is now for Mikal. So Mikal is getting you 3-4 picks. The nature of those picks, who knows? One of those Houston picks is probably looking pretty good. Cam Thomas has been rumored in trades before. Like last season, we heard little murmurings here or there. The Nets probably could have got one pick back. I think in any deal for a high-level guard, Cam Thomas is probably gone. Whether we agree with that or not individually or the fan base, that's a discussion for a different day or a different topic of conversation. I think you get more back from Mikal Bridges because I think opposing teams around the organization, the other 29 teams, would value him more on his contract, on his skill set, even if he has had a poor season. Whereas Cam Thomas, rightly or wrongly, has skeptics here and there across the league. Is he a glorified six man? Is he a genuine budding Donovan Mitchell, Trae Young sort of type? That's where the conversation sort of is. I think Mikal would get you back more. Cam Thomas, if you're getting a guard in return, is the more likely one to go because it wouldn't fit, it wouldn't mesh as well. So I think again, I'm hedging somewhat, but I'm trying to provide context as much as possible in the situations and how realistic they could be.
Is Cam Thomas a point guard?
I think the notion of point guard is like in today's NBA,
Primary
you look at
ball handler. Is he a
primary
primary
ball.
ball handler?
He is absolutely a primary ball handler. Like, you look at Damian Lillard. Look, maybe I personally think he is because I've seen growth and glimpses from him this season. Like, you look at Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray isn't asked to do, to get 7, 8, 9 assists per night because he's got a Nikola Jokic next to him. If you find that other sort of guy, and there were moments where Spencer and Cam worked, there were plenty of moments where it didn't work. But if you have another sort of prototypical playmaker next to him, I think it can work. And I think we've seen nice glimpses from him in terms of just his decision making, leveraging the attention that defenses are giving him, whether it's through blitzes, double teams, etc. I think he's a guy you want to have the ball in his hands a lot of the time because he's making good decisions. The efficiency, as you alluded to, has been pretty bloody great when he's had the ball in his hands too. But I think that there needs to be, what can he do with the ball when the ball is less in his hands? That's something that you could probably have question marks about. What is he doing when he's off the ball? He's shown really good growth as a catch and shoot player, and I think he's a really good driver. I think he's really strong. I think he's really ambidextrous. But yeah, I think the notion of point guard, primary ball handler, I think we're seeing this year that he can handle those burdens. I think he could be even better in a better built team around him. But yeah, I think the answer is yes with a question mark, but the answer would be no. But it's not. I think it's not black and white. It's probably shades of gray.
You make good points and whatnot, and I don't think anyone should be smudging the progress that Cam Thomas made this year. It's obvious he's become a better playmaker. It's obvious his on-ball defense is better. Defense as a whole, I think, is a lot better. I think he's better conditioned. His three-point shooting, as you alluded to, catch and shoot is a lot better. But I'm going to read you a stat that's going to that may deflate you a little bit, okay? So I have 2 players here, okay? Player 1 has created 347 of points generated by assist. Player 2 has 322. One player is Cam Thomas. The other one is Cam Johnson. They have about the same minutes, and you would not call Cam Johnson someone who's a quote-unquote playmaker. Obviously, they're in different roles before people kill me. They're in different roles. They're going to be making different passes, different games. But the fact that their points created by assist are that close kind of scares me a little bit. I don't think that CT could be, not play point guard all the time. I don't think he should be initiating the offense, but he could definitely handle the ball a little bit. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's completely fair. I think he is, a more natural Kobe. That's what he wants to be. But then he's got Kyrie tendencies, and Kyrie would be a primary ball handler. Damian Lillard, Jamal Murray, these guys are primary ball handler-esques. They're guys that have, Kyrie had LeBron. Damian Lillard has Giannis. In seasons past, he's had CJ McCollum. He's probably closer to a CJ McCollum in terms of the role that he does play. But I think it's all about team construction. And I think you want the ball in his hands because he is the best at creating offense for himself. And he has been better at creating for others. The numbers probably don't, bear that out, as you alluded to. But in terms of the amount of points he's created for himself, you compare those to a Cam Johnson where I think he's looked actually okay at points when he's in the pick and roll, maybe even a little bit better than Mikal Bridges, which might be somewhat of a hot take. But I think he's got a tighter handle. I think he's a little bit stronger. I think he's a little bit sturdy. I think he's got a better center of gravity. And we've seen that at points in time, especially with Clax in the pick and roll. But yeah, I think that there are stats that can make you go, oh, Cam Thomas, why are we putting the ball in this guy's hands? And then there are points where you're like, oh, why doesn't the ball in his hands more? Why isn't he having Russell Westbrook level of ball handling duties and usage like he had in his MVP season? So the answer, again, not meaning to hedge, but the answer always is somewhere in the middle. You look at the best version of Cam Thomas, you look at the best version of the Nets. Cam Thomas has had moments where he scored 40 and the Nets have been putrid, but I think some of that is external circumstances. There are times where Cam Thomas has scored despite the circumstances of where the position that he's playing. So, yeah, I think Cam has had a great season, and what his role is going forward will be interesting. And I think the rest of the year, Kevin Ollie is going to give him those chances to continue to utilize extra ball handling duties. And I think that could be a positive for his development.
Oh, yeah. Like, there's no reason that we can't see Cam Thomas come into training camp next year with improved handles that would make me look like an idiot for saying what I just said, right? There's no, I think the sky's the limit for the guy. I'd love him to kind of blossom his game here in Brooklyn. Maybe get traded. I don't know. It definitely feels a little fishy the way that the Nets kind of built this team and kind of almost ignored him. I got to move on a little bit. I don't got a lot of time with you, so I'm going to move on. Roster building. Sean Marks. Is he done? And most of all, we went to the trade deadline this year, and I think we made a major fuck up by not trading Nick Claxton, who may very well just leave for nothing in this offseason. What do you think about Sean Marks and the Nick Claxton scenario?
Yeah, Shaw Marks individually, a guy from the Southern Hemisphere, a country just abroad of mine. I should have, maybe a stronger kinship to him, but as has been proven season after season, he has his strengths, but I think his strengths are not utilized in the predicament and the situation that the Nets currently are in. And when it comes to Nick Claxton, some of that is on him because, whether it's trading him to OKC or the Mavs or wherever else it might have been, also paying him a high level of a deal because you're hamstrung where you sort of are. And the ball is more so in Nick Claxton's court in terms of dictating where he goes and what his future is. Sean Marks is a bottom tier GM. I'm not saying he's the worst GM in the NBA. I would say, like, if you got tiers of the 15 best GMs in the NBA and the other 15 worst, I'd say he's in that bottom tier. But I think he has strengths that are top tier. He's a good drafter, but he has guys around him that allow him to be a good drafter and scouter. I don't think he's good at roster construction. I don't think he's amazing when it comes to building a winning sort of team. So when the chips are down, that's where it seems to me that the Nets are relying on Brooklyn as a destination. And look, there's got to be intel of Donovan Mitchell or one of these guys saying, hey, I want to come here. But it's just like, you have the opportunity to reset and rebuild, and choosing not to do that, whether that's him or Joe Tsai, I think this is going to be a decision that comes back to haunt him and the Nets going forward. And he feels the heat, and the heat should be turned up for him because he has made plenty and many mistakes, and I don't think he's the right GM for the Nets franchise moving into the future. That's just my personal opinion.
Talking about bad moves, Ben Simmons. We just found out that he's going to be out for the year. Obviously, major disappointment after pretty much the offense was built around him, built with him in mind. Completely.
Again, another decision that that just is bewildering. Whether it's Jacques Vaughn, Sean Marks, or both, I think it's both.
I agree. Ben Simmons. Net next year? Yes, no. Does he retire? Does he finish the year as a net? Does he get bought out, traded? What do you think?
Yeah, I think I said this when Nick and I did like a little Ben Simmons series in the off season. Forecasting what Ben Simmons' role within Brooklyn and beyond is like trying to predict the lottery numbers. Like, you just have no idea. But there is a pattern of what has happened. He'll play 5 to 10 games, hook you in a little bit with those 5 to 10 games, then have a niggling injury, and then the niggling injury leads to heavier injuries. That's been the pattern, unfortunately, of what we've seen from Ben Simmons. So I don't think he's long for Brooklyn or the NBA, whether his contract is used as a bait in an expiring sort of deal or some sort of trade, etc. I think it's a sad state of affairs, given he was really wanting to play at the Olympics as well, which would have been really cool to see him suit up for the national team. But I think his future, it's the only thing I can just boil it down to. It's just a sad state of affairs for a guy who was a top 10 and all NBA caliber talent, and now his body is just failing him. And predicting what is going to happen with a guy whose body just continues to fail him game after game, season after season, it's fool's gold.
I'm going to hit you with another curveball. This might be a little bit of a difficult question, so we're going to use a lot of hypotheticals for this. You're named the Nets GM going forward. Jack, what are your first moves? What are the goals of the offseason if you were the GM, if you were Sean Marks?
For me, people, what I'm going with is I'm doing that Mikal Bridges deal, which gets the draft capital back in return, and I do that in a goddamn heartbeat because where the Nets are right now, they'd have a top 5 pick, or at least the chances of getting a top 5 pick. Yes, we could draft, etc., but recouping that and having that as well as the Phoenix Suns draft future, who that could end up being kind of juicy going forward.
Jack, I'm only going to give you that. Mikal only has 2 years left, so I'm only going to give you 2 first-rounders and a protected first. Do you do that?
Two
regular first and then a protected.
I mean, if
what
those
would
first,
you need to move him?
I think you need it to be that at a minimum, but I think you're feeling more comfortable with what the Houston has offered. Pelicans have been rumored to offer. The Grizzlies have rumored to offer. So if those deals are still there, you do that. You pick up the phone and you call those GMs immediately. But whether that happens, I don't know. But other moves, look, if I have the chance, I go Clax. I'm offering you $15 to $20 million a season. Take it or leave it, mate. If another team offers you that, cool. Well, then see you later. Unfortunately, or I try and figure out a sign and trade, recoup some sort of capital for his departure. I think outside of that, the Nets are just so hamstrung with the roster construction they currently have. Dorian Finney-Smith, do you offload him for picks? I think that a full rebuild is something that I would go towards. But I don't think that the Nets, Josiah, and the rest of people have much of an appetite for that. I'm more in the route of doing that. Go Jalen Wilson. Let's give you some minutes. Let's get rid of a heap of these other guys, and let's open up some space for the team to just be fun and building moving forward. And let's try and get some. Let's try and reset the direction as being a rebuilding team rather than being a retooling team.
All right, Jack. I know you got to go, so I'm going to ask you 2 things. One, what is your favorite Nets jersey?
The Coogee one from a couple of seasons ago. I don't know. I've just got a soft spot for that. And D'Lo, when he had like the sleeves, the Coogee sleeves, I was just like, look, D'Lo gets his slander, but man, that was, I think it's just fire. I think it's really hot.
You got any plugs?
Jac Manuell on Twitter, Brooklyn Buzz. Listen to that, Nick and I are doing our best to continue recording, providing as good content as we can, and we'll continue to do that for the rest of the season for our listeners. Make sure you're listening to every Nets podcast and Nets content out there because there is so much of it. Obviously, it's been a tough year, but continue to support the guys that are putting the content out there, whether that's Pete, whether that's Locked On Nets, whether that's Eric Slater, whether it's the beat reporters, whether it's Nets Kingdom, whether it's us at the Brooklyn Buzz. Do whatever you want, but we're putting in the work. We're trying to put the best content out there for you guys, and Nets World, we'll keep going. We'll keep going.
All right, guys. You can find me at NetFansYouKnow on Twitter, on YouTube, dropping at least 1 episode a week, maybe 2. Have a great day. Have a great night. Whatever you guys are doing. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. And let's go Nets. We're out.